Scott just made
Go
the
back to
point.
Thomas Jefferson, you'll
used to
read
be a
that.
lot more secure, not just. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle, and this is part 2 in our 3-part trifecta on the pursuit of happiness. Now, in part 1, we looked at how a nation founded on the idea of the pursuit of happiness didn't just do cool things well. When you get right down to it, leading a fun and happy life is what having life is all about. But today we're going to look at the genetic defectives, the power mad, the incompetent, the envious, and the petty, whom we've allowed over the past several decades to take ever more control over our awesome lives. So I'm calling this installment The Pursuit of the Pursuit of Happiness. So let's bring in fanatical, religious, hate-filled zealot Scott Ott and rigid, strict, and disapproving teetotaler Stephen Green to get to the bottom of this, shall we? It's low bandwidth Wednesday here at PJTV. We've got the dial-up thing going, so if we have a little internet problems, there's nothing we can do about it. You know, gentlemen, they are everywhere, these busybodies in politics who have never been happy, they aren't happy, and they're never going to be happy, and therefore they're determined that no one else can be happy either. And or there are the types of selfish bastards that are all about banning, regulating, and restricting every single kind of fun activity, except, of course, for the ones that they themselves indulge in. So, Scotty, let's start with you. One of the reasons that politicians and bureaucrats are so widely despised throughout every culture and every time is because, for some reason, so many of them just have to tell other people what to do. And usually that some reason is not too hard to spot. I'm calling this the Barney Fife effect. Now, Barney Fife, as you may remember from the Andy Griffith Show, is ostensibly a nice enough guy, but given some authority, well, while the real authority's out of town, for example, he becomes a petty little tyrant. That's why Andy only gives him one bullet and makes him keep it in his pocket. Now, Scott, how do we make sure that the makers and the growers of this giant ball of regulatory kudzu only get one bullet from now on and they have to keep it in their pocket?
Well, that would take a return to the constitutional strictures, the enumerated powers to keep these people in their box. You know, in an odd way, though, I think that the kind of people who are trying to control our lives are pursuing their own happiness. They just pursue it amiss. They think that if they were able to exercise their authority over you, that would ultimately make them feel good. And so what they fail to grasp in the overall pursuit of happiness is your happiness should not become a restraint on somebody else's happiness. And I think what they ultimately find out is at the end of the day, when they're in their rocking chair or taking their last gasps of air, they realize that that little petty princeling attitude that they've had all their lives hasn't really brought them happiness at all.
Yeah, I wish I could figure that out on the first breaths of air instead of the last ones, but that's work for us all to do, I guess. You know, Steve, not too long ago, the city of Santa Monica decided to levy a fine of only $1,000 for throwing a Frisbee on the beach. Now, Santa Monica claims that the only occurs where people are endangered, but in my extensive experience with Frisbees, one thing happens all the time and the other thing never happens at all. Frisbees being badly thrown or being taken by the wind, well, that happens all the time, and they don't always go where they're intended. It happens all the time. Precious snowflake killed by errant Frisbee is a headline I have never, ever, ever, ever seen in my entire life. $1,000, Steve. Now, why do people vote for things like this, or for prohibition, if you'd like something a little bit closer to home?
You know what? People don't vote for $1,000 fines on Frisbee throws. What they vote for is the nice candidate who promises the nice thing that, oh, you know, we're going to clean up the beach. And the nice voter says, oh, you know, that sounds nice. I'm going to vote for that candidate. But you know what I'm reminded of? I keep a word processor file of favorite quotes. And I just copy and paste stuff into there all the time. Something I learned from my dad. After he died, I was going through his stuff and I found a legal pad with just pages of handwritten notes of favorite quotes of his. And I started doing this a few years ago myself. Something, you know, my kids will find when they're going through my electronic files years from now. But I'm reminded of the C.S. Lewis quote. So I pulled this up when we were in between segments here. C.S. Lewis said, "Of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. It would be better to live under robber barons than under omnipotent moral busybodies. The robber baron's cruelty may sometimes sleep, his cupidity may at some point be satiated, but those who torment us for our own good will torment us without end, for they do so with the approval of their own conscience." Or, if I may take C.S. Lewis's beautiful words and put them into modern bumper sticker vernacular, nice people suck.
Well, I can assure you of one thing, ladies and gentlemen, the people that wrote the $1,000 fine for throwing a Frisbee on the beach are not people who actually go out and throw Frisbees on the beach. You know, as I mentioned, I think there are two flavors of people who are in perpetual pursuit of the pursuit of happiness. The first type are the Barney Fifes of the world. They're people whose own insecurities, lack of success, and self-esteem drive them to enforce their will on others no matter how they can. Barney Fife is a very benign form of these unhappy, bitter, rage-filled people. Joseph Stalin and Adolf Hitler are two of the worst. Same basic personality. And we can see this smug, passive-aggressive smirk of bureaucratic control and power from everyone from meter maids and DMV clerks all the way up to administrators of the FAA and the EPA who kindly remind us of all the things that they, as unelected officials, allow us to do. Now, the other kind is the sort of bastard that moves into a reduced-price house situated underneath an airport departure and then spend their lives trying to close the airport because they don't like the noise, or they want to stop personal watercraft because they don't like the noise, or they want to limit snowmobiles because they don't like the noise, or they want to take away ATV trails out in the middle of the desert 200 miles away from them because they think the lizards won't like the noise. These are the people who want to ban airports because they don't fly. They want to ban jet skis because they're never in the water. They want to ban snowmobiles because they never leave the house, and they want to ban all-terrain vehicles because they're dicks. That's why. They're lemon-sucking, mean-spirited, low-life bastards who want to ban anything they don't personally enjoy, and they all need to go live in places like Russia and China, where everything that is not mandatory is forbidden. Because ultimately, as we see in our Members Only Part 3, the best way to defeat these petty little tyrants is to not fight with them or argue with them. It's to mock them. And the way you mock them is just like this.
In a jailhouse down in Dixie, fighting crime and risking life, dwelled a sheriff and his buddy, pistol packing Barney Fife. Oh, my Darrin, oh, my Darrin, oh, my Darrin, Barney Fife. He's a deadly crime stopper, what a copper, Barney Fife. And one day there come a riding two bad men to rob a bank, but Fife was tricky, a dead-eye dickie, now they're locked up in the tank.
Oh, my Barney, Barney had a jail and couldn't lock it, had one bullet for his pistol, had to keep it in his pocket.